send them some to me so often. It's like, why should I ever buy them from you? They send me one like every couple weeks. They run out of ink fast, so you notice.
We ready to go? Okay. I'd like to call the regular monthly meeting of the Board of Directors of the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District open for business. I would like for our Employee of the Year to come up, Caitlin, and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Is it on? Okay. Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated.
Thank you, Caitlin. Sounds like the hollow halls. Roll call, please.
Director Kelly?
I'm here.
Director Malloy?
Here.
Director Mishler?
Here.
Director Dixon?
Here.
Chairperson Bangner?
Here. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, we're going to pull item 5A.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the amended agenda?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Karen, please.
Director Malloy?
Aye.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Director Kelly?
Aye.
Director Dixon?
Aye.
Chairperson Bangner?
Aye. Presentations. Looks like Bob is up. Are you on? For capital improvements, sir?
Yes, ma'am, that'd be me.
Okay.
Happy New Year. Glad to see everybody back in good shape, and we'll start the new year right by giving you a little update on our capital improvements for the year. As you know, capital assets are real and personal property that anything greater value than $5,000 has a greater lifespan in a year. Applies to all the construction, our capital improvement projects, our major equipment purchases, and social or special projects. Again, the CIP assists the board and staff and the community with identification of a long-range plans for the district. Projects are prioritized and approved by the board prior to inclusion to the annual budget, making the budget process a little more effective and efficient. So the completed projects so far, we've got the Pitch Ranch Pavilion done. We got Nancy Bush shade structure, which is getting ready for the second phase. They put it on too tight, it tore. So we have a new piece in our lunchroom. They'll be coming out within a few weeks. Valle Lindo restrooms are open and redone. Mel Vincent restrooms are open, new complete building. Phase 2 of the painting at PB Fields and the Freedom Ball Fields parking lot and Skyway Road in front of my office and co-op. Here's Pitts Ranch. You can see the construction on the left and finished product on the right. This sits about, I believe, about 60 people. Nancy Bush, as you see the shade structure being built, those pylons are about 6 feet deep, about 2.5 feet wide of concrete. A lot of concrete. Here's Valle Lindo restroom. I was going to give you an old one picture, but I figured it's too nice now to show that, so we put all new. Mel Vincent, you can see it being brought in, and it's in place on the left there. So we had to do a little changing on this one. We're going to have it set back a little further. The city wanted it up closer, so it kind of messed with our ADA ramp and everything, so we had to go through and get all that worked out. And then the second phase of PV Fields of painting. They're doing a really good job. Looks great. And here's the Freedom Park in front of the co-op, my office. They're doing a grading and then finished product. And these projects are in progress. We ordered the lights. We'll be starting Monday at the Springville Tennis Courts, all LED lights on it. The trucks have been ordered. We're waiting for them to come in. The marquees, we're in the process of that now also. Jessica's been getting some prices on this. We need to order the lights. We could have already ordered those. I'm not sure. I was off for a few days. And Charter Oaks, we're doing the trees right now. Once the trees get done, we'll start the irrigation.
You're talking about putting in the new line at Charter Oaks?
Yes, to water the new
Yeah.
trees, yes. And we have, the Quimby project is an aquatic center. And there's a picture of that. And here's the money we've gone through. Budgeted 248, 190, we spent 195. Budget again is 421, and then we spent 294. We still have some outstanding bills yet to come in, so, but we'll still be way below that number. So, Valle Lindo, we still have a contingency to pay off yet, which it's about, I think, 20,000 we owe left on that job, so that'll come in under. Well, Vincent's the one that came over, and then the Aquatic Center, we spent 61,000 so far for the architectural fees. That is my slide. Any questions?
Bob, I missed, could you go back to the marquee? Have you looked at that?
Have I looked at?
I mean, have we looked into that? Are
Oh, yeah,
we?
we've already started. Jessica's been researching it.
Okay.
And we're getting ready to come next month, I believe.
Oh, okay, all right.
So,
She's shaking her head, yes, so I'm assuming that,
she's-
yeah.
make sure it's
Will
not,
that go to a committee first or come straight to the board?
it'll go straight to the board.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah. It's two operations. We got to order the digital end of it, and then we have to have somebody build it. So, but recreation, we got all their input, what they would like to have on it, what the city tells us we can do and not do. So we're moving forward with it.
And it'll go where the old one is.
Yes.
Will it sit perpendicular or?
Yes. Same identical angle. It will sit a little taller.
Okay.
So and it'll be bigger. We can go up to 36 square feet, I believe. So we'll take it as large as we can get, probably. So. Anything else?
Any other questions? Okay, thank
Okay.
you, Bob, appreciate it. Caitlin, you're next with new employees?
I am. So good evening, Board Chair Magner and members of the board. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing our newest recreation specialist, Bev Dransfeld. Bev started with the district last summer as a senior rec leader working with events. She's already been a huge help with summer concert series, the Letters to Santa campaign, and other various events and programs. She also helped the district partner with the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, sorry, it's a mouthful, to bring the play letters and the mailbox for the Letters to Santa to our community. We are happy to have her expand her role in the district to include Camp Fantastic, the HCF grant, and continue to support with events and community partnerships. Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Beth. Okay. Public comments. In accordance with Government Code Section 54954.3, the board reserves this time to hear from the public. If you would like to speak on an item on the agenda, we would prefer you complete a speaker card, give it to the clerk of the board, and wait until it comes up. If you would like to make comments about other areas not on the agenda in accordance with California law, we will listen, note them, and bring them back at a later date for discussion. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. I have one card, and it is from Deidre Rose. Would you like to come down, please? Please state your name and your address, please, and then there you go.
My name is Deidre Rose at 765 Hacienda Drive here in Camarillo, and I'm here with the 2020 census. All over the county, everywhere you go, you see lots of advertisements and publicity about completing your census form. I work on a different part of the census. We're hiring 1,000 census takers, temporary employees in Ventura County at $21 an hour. And we haven't had as much publicity on this as we would like, that we are actually, in fact, hiring.
Okay.
And so I've brought some bits of information to give to you, and I'm a recruiter from based in Camarillo here. I've been to 4 events with the rec area, the last one being the Polar Plunge.
Okay.
Happy to attend anything, small, big, whatever, to help recruit people and get the word out. My name and number is on the card inside these packets, so hopefully we'll hear from some of you and we can get the word out at different events and whatnot.
If someone wanted to contact you, should they call our front office there? Or what's the easiest way, Mary? Can we pass on the information if someone calls our office? For the census, if they want to be if they want more information on this?
They can do that, but Eric's also working with somebody from the census as well, so.
Okay,
we
thank
do
you.
that either way.
So,
Okay, thank you.
So Eric, you'll take that, the information she's going to give, or you have it?
Yes, Chair. I'm sitting on a task force regarding the census and working with various agencies throughout the county.
Okay.
And this is just one aspect of it, is the recruitment phase.
Okay.
So we're providing support how we can. But if there's any questions from the community or the board or anybody else, please direct them my way.
Okay, all right.
Excuse me, are these, I know it's a limited period of time that you're going to be hiring them, but during that time, is it full-time or part-time, or is it?
It can be either.
Can be-
You can work up to 40 hours a week if they so wish, or they're very flexible hours, so if you have to go pick up kids from school, you can work your time around that. It's very, very flexible.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Consent agenda. Are there any changes to the consent agenda? May I get a motion to pass the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second? Go ahead, Mark.
Second.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Director Kelly, Director Dixon,
Aye.
Chairperson Megner.
Aye. Okay, item 8. Consideration of granting of easement for shared parking at Bob Kildee Park with Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo. Are you on?
So that would be me, Chair.
Okay.
Good evening, Mary Otten, General Manager. So tonight before you, what we have is a easement with of our property for the Boys and Girls Club. And what we're looking at is currently there's a mutual parking driveway agreement since 1973. I also have Roberto here from the Boys and Girls Club if you have specific questions. I actually want to thank him because neither one of us could find this agreement. I think you found it with the city of Camarillo after going through a bunch of archives. Otherwise, neither one of us knew that this existed. So both agencies need a current agreement. This one actually is still in effect since it's been there since 1973. The agreement defines responsibilities of both parties. There are a few differences from the current one and the upgraded one to the one in 1963, and I can kind of go, or 73, and I can go through a few of those. So in July of 73, the request for the development of the Boys and Girls Club. So what happened in 73 was there was no Boys and Girls Club. They got the property, and at that point in time, they went before city and the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission said they had a couple concerns. One was the structural design, the other was parking. So in order for them to be able to do a build, the condition of that permit was they needed parking. So they had some parking spaces, but they needed more. So what ended up happening is we entered into a revocable license, and the district agreed to grant the club to construct a couple things. One, a new driveway at the club's expense. And the second thing is then what would end up happening is that we would actually give them, or I shouldn't say give them, they would be able to use parking during those periods of time in which the district didn't need it. So the agreement was effective for 1-year periods and renewed automatically each year. So then again in 95, At that point, it was, I believe, Eldred Locker who did memorialized another agreement and clarified the new parking entry. So the club was permitted to encroach upon district land along the eastern club property, which is kind of where the ADA parking space and also where the entrance, staff entrance is. So what they were able to do is use that space as well. So the Boys and Girls Club is going back. They're looking to expand their indoor facilities to cover the outdoor basketball court. So they're not, so what's happening is where the outdoor basketball court is, they're expanding that area. Their footprint isn't changing, but instead of an outdoor court, what that will become is an indoor facility for them. So as part of that expansion, the city of Camarillo is also requesting a parking agreement be updated to make sure that it's in compliance, because once again, they'll still need the space, they'll still need the parking. So the club desires to share the use of the parking space or a continued use of the parking space. So what you have right here is this is D and E, is the Boys and Girls Club is outlined, that's their property. All of this property here, and even as the entrance or that easement ingress and egress, that's all district property. So this is the basketball court, so this is where the expansion will happen, so it will be indoor. So just to kind of give you an idea what that will look like, there's the building, here's where the expansion on the backside will go. But you'll notice nothing else has changed with that expansion. So some of the most significant provision in the agreement is a non-exclusive easement. The district retains the right to make a permitted use of the land, so that still means that, like with all of our users, we still have all of those rights. The club's use of the district parcel won't conflict with the district's principal operating hours. And what we do in practice right now, so let's say the club has an event on a Saturday, a Thursday, whatever it looks like, what they will do is they will reach out to us. And then what we will do is make sure that we don't have like a baseball tournament or some big aquatics event, to make sure that those things don't conflict already. So, and what we've done in the past is we do a one-page MOU that says here's what they can use to make sure that we don't have conflicting events. So the provision also, in this provision, will also have a maintenance and repair. So the club currently is responsible if they have events and the parking lot was to be damaged, the club would still be responsible for that currently. So the other thing we've added in there is a contribution of $4,500 with a 10% automatic escalator, meaning that 2 years ago, Bob, was it last year, that we finished redoing the 3 years already? It can't be. Time flies. So when we had that done, in the past, there hasn't been a contribution. So what we've asked the Boys and Girls Club to do is do a contribution of $4,500 with a 10% escalator. So that means in 5 years, if we redo the parking lot, they'd pay for a portion of that with an escalator on top of that. So that would be something else that they would do as well. One of the things in the 1973 agreement that is not in the new one, which we can put in there, is that we have shared parking usage, which means that, for example, right now in the 73 one, it says that we can use their parking lot. So like for when pony baseball tournaments or if we have large events, we overflow into theirs. So if we need to update that and put that in this agreement, we can do that as well. If we decide that we want to, at some point in time, with the 1973 agreement, is do a 15-day notice, so that way we only have one agreement in place. Excuse me, there's no fiscal impact associated with this action. So we're asking the board tonight is recommended the board approve the proposed agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo for a non-exclusive shared parking easement. And so basically what the parking easement does is it makes sure that anybody that would come along, either for the Boys and Girls Club or there's a new director, that there's something in place that says that we have this parking easement for at least the next 5 years. And then we'd renegotiate after that. So, any questions?
I have no questions.
Mary, I have a question with the parking. The part of the parcel on the map, if you bring up the map, where the asphalt is for the Boys and Girls Club, they have the part of the entryway and parking. So that's still theirs. I mean, we're not.
That's correct.
Yeah, so they're still responsible for their own area. We
That's
obviously are not responsible for that or the trees or the parking in that area.
What-
So they do their own maintenance for that section.
That's correct. So
That's going to continue.
That's correct. So what we're asking for is, because they have to use this ingress and egress area here, and then they typically use this area right here, or they'll use this, especially during the weekdays between the hours of 4, actually probably 4 and 7 p.m. when you have drop-off, pickup. So that's a majority of what they use is here, and then these two areas right here.
Okay, and then the next question is, I'm not sure if you want to answer it or have someone else come up, but is there not going to have any basketball court there at all then, I guess, in the future?
I'll actually let Roberto answer kind of what's going in this area for.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, I know you're using that space. Are you going to add a basketball court somewhere else, or you're just going to take it out completely?
So we're going to remove the, thank you, directors. We're going to remove the exterior basketball court. We're going to maintain our indoor gymnasium, which is, a little bit under 8,000 square feet. So that'll serve the purpose of the sports and recreation. But as our after-school population has grown and we need to serve more kids in our after-school programming, we're going to make that space more specific to after-school programs in terms of science, technology, an area for kids with special needs, and do some internal restructuring to make the whole facility flow a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask him a couple of questions.
Okay.
So you're reducing your athletic facilities there at the club?
We
Basically, the bottom line?
We were repurposing some of the space so that so we're going to maintain our indoor gymnasium. The space that we have right now, the outdoor basketball courts, that's going to be repurposed so that it can serve more age-appropriate specific programs.
So the answer to my question is yes?
Yes.
Okay. My second question is a legal one. Why are you, we've had this agreement since 1973, and we didn't even have a copy of it. And yet, we haven't had any problems with the implementation of that non-existent agreement. So why are you asking for an easement at this time?
Well, it's a couple things. One, we want to maintain our positive working relationship with the district. Another part of it is that as we move forward with our plans through the city of Camarillo, although the space is being repurposed, it is being encapsulated in facilities so that adjust the parking requirements as requested by the city of Camarillo for the facility.
Okay, that isn't a very good answer. What did the city of Camarillo ask you to do?
They asked us to provide a shared use parking agreement.
Okay, and you already had one, right?
Correct.
So why do you need a new one, and what benefit do you get from this new easement that you wouldn't already have?
Well, I think what we would have is something a little bit more formalized, something that would hold the test of time. As you had mentioned, we didn't have something in our files, and so we had to go do a little bit of hunting around and make sure that we had the right documents, and we want to make sure that we have the right documents moving forward.
It would also give you a property right in district property, right? At least for the length of the easement?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Well, it would.
Okay.
Mary, what are we getting in the deal?
So I think there's a couple things. One, as I think we both mentioned, that nobody really realized that we had a 1973 agreement. I think the second thing is we're updating the agreement, which is more toward the 1920s, meaning that in the past we've never had an agreement that was that they were paying a share of the parking to assist with anything that needed to be done. The other thing is the old agreement in 1973 really kind of dealt more with them putting in the drive and then using parking. We have in this agreement, not only do we have those things updated, but the other thing that we have in this agreement, it also, if they're going to use it outside those specific hours, we've asked to put in an MOU, so that way, right now, on both sides, that we have better at least there's communication. So as I always say, if Roberta were to leave or I were to leave, we'd have an agreement in place that both agencies understand that you just can't use somebody else's space without communicating what that would look like. So really what it does is it updates that information. And it also means that we also have an existing, it's recorded.
Mary, I can't think of a single reason, based on what I know already and what I read in the paperwork, for us to do this. What's the main reason for our wanting to do this? We already have an agreement with them. It's worked fine for years. Why would we want to do this when we get virtually nothing out of the deal? In fact, we get less because, well, we get a little bit more because they might contribute to some maintenance money, but at the same time, the joint use part of it was left out of this particular agreement.
So what we can do is put that, I mean, we can put that in there. I don't think that that's a big deal to put in there. So right now, the 1973 agreement still stands. So what we've added with the 1920 agreement is that they would actually contribute monetarily to this, would be another one. And the third thing that's in there that is not in the 1973 agreement is that we end up setting up an MOU. There's distinct hours of what our hours are, as well as if we need to, we can add the line in there from 1973 of shared parking.
But it doesn't require an easement in order to adjust our present agreement to reflect those changes, right?
No, I mean, and if we just want to do an agreement, we can do an agreement and not do an easement, I think, unless the city requires that. But I would suggest that we would probably update this agreement so it's more current.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with updating the present agreement, but signing away and giving someone else a property right in our property without our getting something for it, I think, to me, it's almost like we're doing something we shouldn't do, and that's giving away a property right that we're not allowed to do.
I don't know that and maybe I'm
Well, they can, if they have an easement, they can go to court and enforce it, something they can't presently do. So that gives them that right.
So,
Well, let me just, my knowledge from the geology side and my background in history and working developments and projects and stuff, we have, I would assume, I'm not positive on this because I'm not a lawyer with this type of background, but in my background with other projects and stuff, we almost have to give them an easement, I mean, for their parking lot. If a person has a property and the only way they can access that property is through your property, by California law, you have to give them an easement.
You're talking about a landlocked parcel. That's not what we're talking about here.
Well, it is landlocked because they don't have any other way to get in there. The city hasn't allowed them to have their own entryway into that parking lot. So the only way they can enter that is through our property.
No, they're doing well right now.
Going through our property. So they already essentially have an easement through our property.
No, there's a difference between having an easement and having use. An easement gives somebody a right to go to court and enforce it as though they had the property right.
Okay.
In this case, there's essentially no reason to do that. We get nothing for it that we don't already have.
Well, let me ask Mary, has our attorney looked at this wording or anything, this document?
yes.
So I don't know. I mean, that's...
I mean, if the board feels more comfortable that we enter into an agreement opposed to an easement, I can talk to the attorney, but the attorney has seen this.
Now, if I can just chime in for 1 second. So as the club has grown, the agreement has grown as well. So the initial agreement, I think, called for maybe like 10 parking spots. And then when the club grew again in '83, the agreement evolved as well and called for, I want to say it was like 24 parking spots. So now as the club's footprint grows again, we want to make sure that we have something that allows the club to grow and serve the community, but also, for a recreation and park district to serve the community as well. And I think that's why we want to make this something that's mutual, so where as larger Parks and Rec events come into play, whether it's tournaments or other community events, there's that access to the club parking spaces for those families to enjoy.
Well, I think what you just said there is that you're intending to grow and you see that parking becomes a problem as you grow and you want to guarantee, so to speak, your ability to do that.
Well,
and using the easement is the method by which you do that.
Well, the club is growing. We are in plans to expand, and that, based on available space, that'll be the last expansion the club has. What makes it a little bit unique is, our constituents, they come largely by foot, or they come by bus, and then, when they're picked up, it's 5-10 minutes in the parking lot, and then the parents leave. So it's not a huge impact on the parking lot, but we do need to have that access.
I understand that you need access. Every piece of property has its own unique challenges, but the Recreation and Park District is a public entity, and we have to protect the public entity's assets. And the way we protect that is to not give away something we have to someone else.
I understand
Unless there is some reciprocal benefit. I'm waiting to hear that we will get to, we won't be using the basketball court because now your basketball court's going to be twice as busy as it was before.
I wouldn't agree with that. So the current basketball court that we're referring to in the exterior of the club, it's rarely used. We removed the lights several years ago because they were just starting to wear and tear, and that space is used for something else. However, the indoor gymnasium is the space that is more largely utilized.
So I think the other thing that sometimes we forget is that this parking area here during weekends is probably used more by our constituents than it probably is by the Boys and Girls Club. And so when we have large picnics here, when we have the aquatic center that is full, when we have baseball tournaments, and I shouldn't even say baseball tournaments. So when we have, starting in February, when there is baseball, this entire parking lot is full. Not just this parking lot, but this parking lot. So putting this in or updating this would actually, and if once again, we can put that statement in there, is that for overflow, that it is reciprocal. We can put that one line in there so it's reciprocal. But I can tell you right now that on weekends, once baseball starts, that parking lot is full, and people don't distinguish between whether it's the Boys and Girls Club and or the park districts.
Well, when I first asked the question, what are we getting out of it, that should have been your lead. That actually, we are getting something out of it. Frankly, I don't see any need for giving an easement. I think that we can just do an agreement. It's worked fine up until now, and that's what we should do.
Yeah, you're expanding your building and expanding your programs. The city has not asked for any additional parking spaces in the complex itself. They're only asking for you to be able to document that we will provide you additional parking spaces. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, how did that get passed? How did the city approve? I mean, you can't build anything without parking. Additional parking.
So part of this right now is it's in planning, and it can't get out of planning until there's an agreement in place. So if Park District chooses not to agree to this, then it doesn't go out of planning, which means that it doesn't get built.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason it's coming here first, then it'll go to planning, because that was one of the things in the initial planning. So when it went through planning, the two things that is holding it up was the structure, what the structure of what it looked like, and the second thing is parking.
Mary, I think you just misspoke. They're not saying it's not going to get built if we don't have an easement. The city's okay with an agreement also, right?
Correct. What they want to
Okay.
see is an
So
agreement in place.
Not giving an easement has no effect on that.
That's correct. They want an agreement in place, whether it's an easement or an agreement. That is correct.
Is there any potential in planning that they would look at this and say, well, you're really not creating any new parking. All you're doing is just redrawing lines.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
not
I
really, I mean, the entire thing is artificial in terms of providing parking, because I'm sure whether we have an agreement or not, people when they show up are going to park in an empty space. They're not going to.
So I think there's a couple things. And one of the things that they look at when they're looking at parking, I'm not a city planner, but I'll play one today, is they look at the hours of business. So their core hours, the Boys and Girls Club core hours are typically, other than the summer, are usually from about 3 p.m. until 8 p.m. So when you look at that, most of our business isn't at 3 most of our rentals and stuff aren't Monday through Fridays. Most of our stuff is usually Saturdays and Sundays. That doesn't mean we won't have some rentals. That doesn't mean that we don't have swim lessons. But most of that isn't happening during those hours. The other thing with their typical business model is they come in during the hour between about 5 to about 7. They come in, they pick up, and they leave. So what you don't have in this scenario is that you're not trying to add more parking on because of the fact that the business models are the same. If both of our core hours and our business models were, we both had overflow and everything happened on Saturdays and Sundays, you're right, this model wouldn't work. But because of the fact that the business hours are different, that's why this works. What they want to ensure is that they do have an agreement with us that says they can park in there because they do have limited parking.
Because it strikes me that there's already, for our programming, there's already inadequate parking. I remember when we were going to resurface this parking lot, we actually considered adding additional parking spaces, and I think it came out to some astronomical $20,000 per space or something like that. And this seems like it creates an expansion without actually adding any new parking. Seems to potentially create a greater problem in that regard. But maybe not. If the hours are totally different, then maybe the problem just stays the way it is. But
and that's kind of what we look at is when you look at those hours. And that's the only reason it can get through planning is because if they looked at it and they had to write down all of their hours were on Saturdays and Sundays, this plan wouldn't work. You're absolutely correct. But because of their core hours and their business model is between 2 and, like I said, drop-offs, whatever, between 2 and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, that's not when our core business hours are. It's usually on weekends. That's why this model has worked and why they haven't had to expand, why they wouldn't have to expand.
I also think the uses of the space is not going to affect it as like, say we covered that outdoor basketball court and just make it a second gymnasium. Well, then you'd have groups reaching out for rental space, and that would obviously impact parking a lot more than, what it'll be used for is after-school programming where kids are coming in by buses and being picked up by parents.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Mary, the timing of the $4,500, frequency, timing?
It'll be when, the way that it's set up in the agreement would be is when we have to go back and restripe or slurry seal.
So if we do it in 4 years, 5 years, then they will pay us the $4,500 with the 10% yes, whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
If it's in 4 years, then it'd be 4.
But then if they don't renew the easement, because this comes up every 5 years, right?
Correct.
So why would they be willing to pay for something 5 years if they have decided at that time that the easement will no longer be necessary?
So right now, if we go back, it'll be actually because it's already been 3 years, so in probably 2 years, we would end up having to do.
Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion?
Yeah, let me find it here in the paperwork. I move the board approve the proposed agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Camarillo for a non-exclusive shared parking easement.
I'll second.
Karen?
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
No.
Director Dixon,
Aye.
Chairperson Magner.
Aye. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasant evening.
Thank you, Roberto.
And Mary can be invited to the grand opening, Roberto? Okay. All right. Request for proposal for a public consulting firm to assist district with evaluation of voter opinion surveys and polling services. Mary?
Okay, that would be me again. So We have been talking, the way this subject goes is it's in relation to the senior/community recreation facilities. So the district has been partnering with the city to assist with the design concepts, looking at cost estimations, which we've been doing for about the last 2 years. So the district and the city jointly approved what was called Plan D, a little over 30,000 square foot facility as a standalone. And after looking at all of it, looking at what the price tag was, neither agency can afford to pay for this in its entirety as it sits at a little over $34.5 million. So in saying that, what we've done is we've worked with LPA collaboratively with the district and the city and the community. And in September, the board and city council approved option D. As you can see, the price estimate for that, when we went through that, is $34.5 million. We whittled it from 4 options down to 1. In October, the board held a special session to discuss possible financing options. And once again, neither agency could afford the $34.5 million. So both agencies explored financing. The city looked at options in August. The board looked at options in October. And both agencies were presented information by Kurt DeCranis, who's with Columbia Capital, who provided some potential options. So the options that he had presented to the board was the Park District could use general fund reserves. And for those that don't know, our general fund reserves is about $300,000, which is 3.42 less than what this project costs. The Park District could use special capital funds and developer fees, and we do not have $3.4 million in that bucket either. We could use existing assessment and grants. Our assessment district right now is a little over $1 million, and right now is continually used for all our parks and being for landscaping and other such projects. We could look at, or could be proposed city general fund reserves. And I know they have a slew of projects, but they don't have 34.4 for this project. A new voter or a voter-approved special parcel tax, or procedures for bonds. So in saying that, the board authorized staff to retain a consulting firm to assist with the decision on whether to place something on the ballot. So before you tonight is to issue an RF request for proposal to assist the district. So the staff and liaison intend to review the responses and return to the full board with recommendation at a future meeting. So what is in the scope of the RFP? It's the development of the survey instrument for statistical sampling, process of conducting and interpreting public opinion polls, coordination to assess the results, to have a final report to include tabulations, contracts, survey information, key findings, conclusion, and recommendations. And then, should the board and city decide to move forward, they will also help and assist with the developing of the ballot measure. So there's no fiscal impact at this time. Upon selection of the consultant, the district will be obligated to appropriate its half of the funds for the contract. So if you remember, or for the last liaison committee, and I believe the board meeting in December, one of the updates is that we'll be looking to do a special session in January to enter into another cooperative agreement with the city. And then also part of that would be part of the CEQA cost, part of the LPA's next steps, as well as the voter initiative RFP. So with that, it is recommended the board approve and authorize the general manager to issue a request for proposals for a public consulting firm to assist with the district with the evaluation of voter opinion surveys and polling services. And I'd be happy to answer any further questions at this time.
Bob, do you have anything?
Yeah. I once knew, I think, the answer to this question, but I don't know as I sit here tonight. What's the difference in cost I mean, one of the purposes of this is to see if we should, or if not the main purpose, to go and attempt to float a bond, right?
That's correct.
How much does it cost us to float a bond?
For this process, it's, if I remember, it's around $30,000. If I remember correctly, just getting some quotes for this. So it'll be about $30,000 for this process, and we'd end up paying half.
And what will half of the cost be?
About 15,000 is what the district would be responsible for.
So for the public who's maybe listening here,
Yes.
the key point is, I mean, Mary mentioned it, but the city is paying half the cost for this item.
I know. That's why I asked for
Well,
how
I'm
much
just
half
making
of
sure
it
the
would
public
be.
knew.
So it costs us 30,000 to put it on, and it's 15, our half is 15,000 to do the analysis to tell us whether we should put it on. Is that pretty much it?
Well, it not only tells you whether to put it on, it indicates the levels of support at the various amounts. When we did the assessment measure in 2000, we did a phone survey. You know, back then, people had home phones and you could call them and they'd answer. And so we did a home survey. Yeah, it was easier. It was easier to get public opinion.
We still have one of those phones, but we never answer it.
Yeah, exactly. The few that have them don't answer. But anyway, we asked at different levels and also asked about what things were important to them. So it really helps find out, you know, what the community's attitudes are, both towards us, towards the city, and towards the amounts. So it really helps craft a measure that has the best chance to succeed, or it tells you that there's no support for this, and
But it costs you 15 grand to find that out.
well,
Correct.
gosh,
Is there any chance it's going to cost more than
15
that?
grand to find out right now what people's attitudes are.
And that's all, it's 30 grand is it, that's all it's going to cost.
I'll never say that. Part of
Trying to get some answers here
I know.
tonight.
So part of going out, I think what we're trying to do tonight is at least go out for requests for proposals. We know that there's a couple agencies. We've done at least some initial to find out what that would look like. It's between 30, we asked a couple different agencies, it's about 30,000. So we're, you don't know until the requests come back, but when we actually had done some surveying, talked to the city, talked to a couple different agencies, they had it between 25 and 30,000 is typically what they see in order to do this. So once again, as you alluded to, our half would be about 15,000 for that if it comes back at 30,000.
And, okay. I just hope we're not trying to solve mysteries without any clues here, so.
No, I
Well,
think
that's the whole point of this. We're trying to find out something, to make an intelligent decision.
We've
whether or
had
not we
other
wanna move forward or
studies,
not.
and here we are. All right, that's good enough for me. No, I'm,
Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up, I do have one. I had a note here. On page 111 of our handout, down, as you come down through the document, it says work plan and schedule. And then the first bullet point after that says provide demonstrated understanding of the city's needs and scope of the project. Shouldn't that, I would recommend that be changed to district and city needs? What do you think? I would think.
that's correct. We can make that change.
We want to have the district in there.
Absolutely.
Boilerplate stuff.
I know, but still.
We'll make that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Director Malloy?
Well, I just want to make one more comment, and that is, one of the important parts of this is to indicate how much support there is, because if there isn't enough support for a $34 million project, then we got to revise the project. So, this is a really important step, because if you skip this and just go, oh, we'll figure it out, we don't have any sense of what the connection of what the community value is at and what we got to spend. So this is really important. That's it.
Mary, does this come back to us so we know what the amount of money is, or do we just give you the checkbook and the signature authority?
No, this will come back before the board. So just a couple other things that will happen with this. So it will be next week, the city has their meeting. And so what they'll do is, just like we've done before, each agency does a cooperative agreement. So in the cooperative agreement, we'll also have the CEQA. This will be a part of it, as well as the LPA for what they'll need to do as well for the CEQA. So we'll bring all of that stuff back for a special meeting. This will come back before the board, just like we've done with others. So this will come back for final approval. This RFP, once it's done and goes out, as we've done in the past, we've used the liaison committee, so that's 2 of our board members, as well as 2 city council members, both city manager and myself. that will look at these and then make that before. And just as an FYI, the city manager has looked at this, and he gave his input on this as well, so.
Okay, all right. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve and authorize the general manager to issue a request for proposals seeking a consulting firm to assist the district in evaluation of the voter opinion surveys and polling services.
Second.
Karen, please.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Dixon,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Chairperson Magner.
Aye. Okay. 8C, request for proposal for a public consulting firm to perform a nexus study for the purpose of establishing developer impact fees.
This one's me.
Oh.
Hi.
Sorry, Anthony, I'm
worries.
looking over at the general manager here, and she's got her mind elsewhere, so.
I wrote the report and forgot to put my name on it, so no worries. Well, good evening, Chairman and members of the board. And tonight I'm here to ask that the board consider issuing a request for proposals for a public consulting firm to perform a nexus study. The district and city staff, just a little bit of background on this, we've discussed at length the creation of a developer impact fee as something that would be included upon developer conditions in the creation of infill projects or more commonly known as apartment buildings, things along those lines that don't require subdivisions. In order to do that, though, the city would require proof of impact on the park district through a nexus study. So a little further, in June 2019 is about when this idea started to form between the district and the city, in particularly in response to new developments that are going into the city that are non-subdivided developments, or therefore they're exempt from the Quimby Act, and the district doesn't receive any Quimby fees from those projects. In October of 2019, the City Council was briefed during a study session, and all members of the City Council at the time expressed tentative support of the idea, so long as the district provided research and proof, and through a nexus study. So a little bit of background on, or a little bit of analysis on the actual process of developer impact fees, or DIFs. Government Code 66,000 enables approving agencies, in this case the city, to impose and collect fees for development. They have to abide by requirements in the code, which would be the city responsibility. But in order to levy a fee, the need or nexus must be established, which would be the district's responsibility. So this RFP seeks to establish this by requesting, and apologize for all the text here, but this is specifically what's within this RFP. Detailed and legally defensible justification and analysis of nexus study, or including nexus studies demonstrating the financial connection between the need for each proposed fee and the build-out of the district. An assessment of the impact fees already in place, which we may not be taking advantage of currently. They may be underutilized, so the consultant would take a look into that. Any recommendations for adjustments to such fees, or a basis upon which to efficiently utilize those fees. The RFP continues to request a detailed analysis of current levels of service and the necessary measures to achieve the desired level of service outlined in the City of Camarillo's general plan. So a lot of that essentially means, for example, the acreage per 1,000 people requirement. The city has a acreage per 1,000 people of 5 acres per 1,000 people, which we're currently short of. So this would look into exactly what it would take for us to achieve that standard. A suggestion.
Quick question on that. When they're looking at that, are they only looking at the property within the city limits? Are they looking at the property within the entire district?
They're looking at the property within the city limits, because.
So Cam Grove Park is not included, for example?
No. Yeah.
I'm just making up an example. Okay, I'm just wondering. Thanks.
Suggestion of unique areas or separate zones where appropriate and necessary to identify opportunities for additional revenue to accommodate just district-wide growth. So that element right there actually would be a little bit more towards the city in regards to where they might consider putting developments. Sample calculations to provide for facilities, equipment, and infrastructure needed to support recreation and park services for growth based on forecasts of new development over a 30-year period. Typically, this is only done over a 20-year period. However, upon discussion, we just decided on a 30-year period to give this a little bit more longevity, a little bit more teeth, if you will, in as the city grows. And when it comes down to compliance, the district will need to provide the city with proposed projects and needs as we go forward if this were to become implemented. Essentially because the city has to justify why they're levying the fees. So what projects are they going to go fund, or are they going to fund? What kind of projects are they going to be used for? Accounting records will be required to be kept for audit legal reasons on our behalf and the city's behalf. And the state mandates reporting requires the city and district to work together in that particular realm, especially when it comes to financial records. I believe there's a 5-year reporting requirement that the district will actually have to report on what we spent the money on, and in order to satisfy that requirement. So there is no fiscal impact recording associated with issuing this request for proposal. However, upon selection, a consultant will have to be selection of a consultant. The district will have to appropriate funds for the contract. So, with that, staff's recommending that the board approve and authorize the general manager to issue a request for proposals for a public consulting firm to perform a nexus study for the purpose of establishing developer impact fees. Any questions for me?
Is there a Lexus price tag on this Nexus study?
Is there a Lexus price tag? I wish I could give you a simple answer there. It really depends on the
January 2nd, I'm already on a roll.
right? It really depends on what the consultant comes back with and essentially how many hours go into the study. What Mary has discussed with the last item, the price tag's more than likely going to be similar or less because they'll be doing a lot of research. So it's a lot of research man hours that go into it. There have been a few firms that we've contacted and talked to. Unfortunately, it would be cheaper if we could lump the two studies together, but with the nature of the senior center project and the community center project, it doesn't really, it becomes a bit more difficult for us to justify, okay, we're spending this much money on this project, and then we have to split that with the city, so we're separating these two requests out. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, I think they were saying it was between 15 and 25 for this particular one, because it's just the nature of the beast is a little different here. So the price is similar, but it could be coming a little lower. Hope that answers your question, Mark. I'm sorry if it was a little long-winded.
It's an expensive pile of paperwork to stick in a drawer somewhere because that's essentially what it is. Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that when people move into the community, they need places to recreate, and somebody's got to pay for that. So, I mean, the need is pretty obvious, but I understand that isn't how the law works. So, you can't get much of a Lexus for $25,000. So.
Not anymore, anyway.
Not even a used one.
If it was a six-figure expense, then I'd be asking like, how long is it going to take us to get that money back? But I see that pretty good return on investment at that amount, so it makes sense.
Well, to that point, actually, I think one of the last developments that's been considered, I think it was 386 units, and that's about 1,000 people. And if we're in line with any of the Quimby projects that have come in lately, that's about $2 million.
Yeah.
We could get our Lexus money back real fast.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my other question.
And I'm assuming, it hasn't been specifically mentioned, but this is going to be a 100% cost to the district. The city's not sharing in on this one, correct?
That was made abundantly clear during the study session.
No, I'm just making sure. I just want the public to know.
No, I was just responding to that question.
Okay. Once this is done, are you saying the study will be good for 30 years, or am I mistaken on that?
The projection would be, the ideal situation for the study would be that they're projecting growth for 30 years.
Right, but
how we should react to that, essentially. Now, the lifespan of the study, I mean, at any time in that point in time, we might find that it's out of date. So it really is, the expiration date on the study is at one point in time we find that it's not necessary or not necessarily necessary. It doesn't, the nexus is different than what it used to be, I suppose. So
it's not like an automatic deadline, though. It dies automatically by some state law or something. No. So as long as the city is happy with it, we can keep using it until some point where the city will say, well, wait a minute, the conditions have changed, the environment is different, whatever, the assumptions are different, and then they'll force us to do a new one. But until that date, we can keep using it, I'm assuming.
So it's actually, that's a good point. The city would be using it to justify the levying of the fee. You're right, certain assumptions could change, and then they may ask us to do another one. But more than likely, what would happen is that the general plan actually might change. And so those basic assumptions might change. And so they might alter certain portions, or they might make an adjustment for that particular thing, but they more than likely wouldn't have to do the entire study over again.
Okay, okay. Then the last question I have is, we're going to do all this, and it comes back to the board. I understand that. Is the Park District then going to move forward and make the presentation to the city council on this without the consultants? Because I didn't see anywhere in here where the consultants are going to be, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anywhere in the RFP where the consultants are going to be paid to make a presentation to the city for us. Is that going to be our cost? We're going to do that internal? Or do we need them there? You see my question? Do we need to include that as part of this RFP or not? My question to you.
We can put that in there, because what will happen is once they come up, once they have the nexus study, the board would approve it, but it would have to go to city council.
Well, I know we have to
So
go
we can-
there, but
We can put that in there. We can add that in.
And to be clear, at that point, when we would hand this report off to the city, it would probably go through the community development department. And then they would take a look at it to see what it is. And then, for example, they might actually end up asking to do it themselves. It really depends, so.
okay. But we can then add that in here
Yeah.
for the to include, you can add another bullet point or something in there for, to add consultants would be, help make a presentation to the city if required.
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Kelly?
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot more infilling going on now in the city. And so my question is, how did this subject come up?
So this subject came up, actually, I think it came up in a couple different ways, but as you know, the district has limited revenue opportunities.
Say that again?
As you know, the district has limited revenue
Of
opportunities.
course.
I'm sure you're very well familiar with that. The question became, especially with the approval of certain developments, where the offsetting revenue would come from to help the Park District essentially serve those residents. And the answer was there was no offsetting revenue. In order to do that, we would have to go through a certain set of steps, and that actually just literally came out between discussions between city and district staff as to what would the process be, and then it kind of worked its way up to our general manager and the city manager, and we had a bit of a meeting of the minds, and that's how it ended up in front of the city council.
So the city is on board?
Yeah, I would.
Yes. We actually had it was about a year and a half ago, I think, when some of the apartments started going up on Ventura Boulevard. And so one of the questions that I had posed to planning was, we're now having these infill projects, and I think it was also when the Kmart project started coming online, of we're now going to put, anywhere from 50 units to 300 to 1,000 units, and there's no, right now, the way that it sits, we don't get any developer fees. So then we started having conversations with the city, and then as Anthony had said, with staff of what is our next steps? So as going through, part of that was, the other thing would be to do what's called the diff fees. So the developer, so then we had a conversation with the city manager, and then went before, he presented it before the council, because one of the things that we had the discussion with is, I don't want to go back to the board and ask for $30,000 if the city council is not on board of us doing a nexus study, and then we're throwing $30,000 away because we can't levy the fees. So that's kind of where the progression of this has gone. So that's kind of where it started. I believe at one point it actually went through policy, long range.
We'll do long range.
Long range, that we had kind of gone through long range to make sure we had a couple board members that were on board of, what are the next steps. So that's kind of been the progress over the last year or so.
So it's probably in here, and I've tried to find it, but I can't. And it's probably in the documents back here. But I'm assuming we get this nexus study done, and then that's kind of our baseline that works for a number of years. But each time a project comes up, there has to be an analysis of that individual project to make sure that is one of the properties that is going to fit into the overall what we're trying to do. Is that correct?
Correct. So right now, if anybody subdivides land, so if you subdivide land and there's a development, that's how we get the Quimby fees. If you don't subdivide, so when you look at apartment complexes, they don't subdivide the land. You have one owner. So what happens is you could put 1,000 apartments in there, and right now they say the average household is 2.67, I think it is. And so if you multiply, what we did is multiply the 300 because they've got a project going up on Verdugo, 387 units times 2, you've almost put 1,000 residents with no new parkland, and no new Quimby fees. So my question is where do all those people recreate? Where do they go? So what this Nexus study should be able to say is they'll look at those things and say, if you put X amount of people, here's what you should either get for fees, here's what it looks like from a park level services. So that's what this Nexus study should be able to do. So then it would go before council and say, these are what the fees should be, here's what you should get, or what, it should be able to break that.
So we have to rely on the council to say, yes, your argument has merit, and you should be able to grab those fees. Is that?
That is correct, which is why we have to do the Nexus study, which is why I went before council to make sure that they were on board, that if we did a Nexus study, that they would be on board to say, yes, we'll take this Nexus study and be able to move forward.
Because I could see a situation where a developer comes in, maybe even on the smaller side, but high density, and the city has decided that they want that project, but then we come along and say, hey, we want our share also, and that sinks the project.
That's the reason that's part of the reason we went before council. Now, I can tell you one of the things is what they don't want to see is that they have to pay Quimby and diff fees. So that will be one thing that they made clear during that meeting, is that what they don't want is for us to come back with a Nexus study that says you have to pay Quimby and these. So they're willing to look at that. Quimby is Quimby, and then diff fees would be for any project that doesn't pay Quimby.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, with Quimby fees, we have monies provided, and when we go to use that money, the restriction really is we have to just demonstrate that the people whose project, or the development that they're in, that they are somehow benefiting from that. It sounds to me like these are maybe a little more restrictive in terms of what you said. You said you have to, for this impact fee, you said that we have to identify the proposed project and needs. It sounds different than the Quimby fee restrictions, and could you clear that up a little bit?
It's similar in that nature, in that the project has to have some relationship to the development. Except it shifts the time in which you justify that relationship to when the development is proposed. So I'm going to use a city example. When the Springville development was being put together, the Springville master plan, the overpass there, that overpass was a collective condition of that entire development being put in place. And the city, while the city built that particular overpass, they received monies to help alleviate the cost of that development. Which was obviously clearly related because you have residents moving into an area in which there is no traffic access over the freeway at that time. So in this particular case, the city would maybe ask the district for a potential project that would benefit the proposed development, or a list of improvements or park spaces that we would use to serve that particular development, or facilities that would improve, any particular item that might serve that development would be something that we could discuss with the city in regards to that's what the fee will be levied to provide for. Now, when it comes to the restrictions on spending the money on something other than that particular project or something, I don't think the conditions actually define exactly what it has to be. But you can get to a point where it can get that granular. It just really depends on the discussions that are between the developer, the city staff, and the district staff. So there is a little bit of wiggle room in there, but it does, like I said, it shifts the burden of relationship, I should say, to the beginning of the process rather than the end of the process.
Okay, so rather than having a certain amount of money supplied and then we have a 5-year or whatever our window of time is to designate where we're going to spend that money, we would potentially have to identify that as the project is in progress.
Essentially, or what would happen is the district would say that there are certain facilities that we're considering building over a certain period of time. That's why I said it could be a little bit more loose.
Okay.
In that the money would then go into an account, and then after a certain period of time, if the district hasn't spent it, we have to justify why we haven't spent it. And it could be that the project's on hold. It could be that we're choosing to use it for a different project that also serves the development. There has to be some work put into that to explain why. And I think it's a 5-year period. So there is still a 5-year period. It just now happens to be, well, what are you spending it on, and why haven't you done it yet? Which is kind of what it boils down to, whereas the Quimby fees are, well, what are you going to spend it on, and how is it related? So they're very similar questions in that regard, but it just so happens that the money isn't as restricted, I would say.
And as with Quimby fees, a developer has the option of developing a park or something like that rather than providing Quimby fees. Would this potentially the same sort of thing happen here if somebody had a large apartment complex? Potentially they could donate some land or something like that in lieu of money? Or
I believe that is still an option. I'm not as familiar with that particular portion of the code as I should be probably, but I think that's still an option, but I believe it has to come to an agreement with the district and the city in order to alleviate the condition of that particular development.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
In other words, we would have to agree. It's not a one-sided, the developer can't decide on their own if we don't agree with that. And there's been times in the past when a developer has wanted to give us land, and we said, no, we need the money instead.
Well, Mary, I think you answered it before. We can't have both. We can't have the fill-in price and Quimby. We either have to have one or the other.
So one of the things that council wanted to make sure when we were having this discussion is, and I think Director Kelly had kind of alluded to this, is what you don't have is you have projects that become that the developers can't do. So meaning you have, let's say, $2 million in Quimby fees, and then you're going to add all these diff fees. So then what happens is the project just fails because they can't afford to do it. So one of the things that council wanted to make sure of is that we still will have Quimby fees. So if they subdivide, we'll have that. Okay. If they don't subdivide, then with this Nexus study, it would tell us what those fees should be, but they wouldn't be required to pay both Quimby and the diff fees.
Well, that is what I was asking. The question really was: are they allowed to, in lieu of providing impact fees, can they offer parkland or something of that nature, rather, and not both Quimby fees and impact fees, but.
Mary, if I may, there's actually, so a portion in the RFP is actually asking the consultant to come up with the need for any additional facilities and the type of project on which the fee would be imposed. And that's a legal requirement that we have to provide some sort of justification. So essentially, there's a benefit relationship that has to be established when they levy the fee. Now, if there is a new apartment complex that goes in Verdugo, and in that particular area of town, there's not a lot of park space on the north side of the freeway. Nearby that particular area, I believe the nearest park is Adolfo.
In Canto.
In Canto. So in this regard, if they purchase the lots that, what's the horse show that was out there a little while ago?
Valle.
If the developer decided to purchase the lot because it was very clearly next to the apartment complex, and they say, we're going to develop a park here to serve these residents, that could be a discussion between the city and the district to say, okay, well, we're not going to levy the fee because they're actually developing a park for you. So that can be done.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to move forward on this item?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve and authorize the general manager to issue a request for proposals for a public consulting firm to perform a Nexus study for the purpose of establishing developer impact fees.
Second.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Dixon,
Aye.
Director Kelly, Director Malloy,
Aye.
Chairperson Magner.
Aye. Okay, 8D, consideration and approval of bid award for the Aquatic Center shower and dressing room remodel. Bob, you're on.
Good evening again. Tonight I'm coming to you to talk to you about the Pleasant Valley Aquatic Center's the remodeling project. So, summary is the board put aside $500,000 in Quimby fees to design and remodel the existing showers and dress rooms at the aquatic center. Board approved an architectural firm, and we sent out an RFP for construction, and the final steps to prior to construction is to get your approval. So here's a little background. This is part of the 2019-20 capital improvement plan. So on September 4th, the district approved Leach Mount Architects to do the design. On October 2nd, we came back and with new layouts of the design for the showers and dressing room, and the board approved it. On November 7th, I came back and the board approved the bid specifications for the project and solicits bids to come back at the December meeting and award a bid. We extended that date 2 weeks. It was a quick turnaround, and we decided to push it back and just because the amount of questions we were getting asked and everything on this project. So we pushed it back 2 weeks and make sure everybody had enough time to get the right bids in. A little background, the pool was built in 1969. It gets about 90,000 visitors a year there. It gets used 7 days a week. It was remodeled in the late 80s, the whole pool inside and out. And, you know, having worked on the front office, the lobby, the dress rooms, and the showers and the pool. In 2006, we redid the front lobby and the dressing rooms, just new tile, changed the counter to ADA compliance. And again, in last year's budget, we did the fiberglass pool shell itself. We replaced the metal slide on that one because it was 10 years old, and as much work we did to it, it was an indoor facility that, you know, the chemicals will get to it. Again, the original design had 8 showers, with 1 being ADA. We'll go down to 7 inside where the original 8 were. We'll knock that down to 7, and we'll put 2 walls in the dressing, 2 ADA stalls in the dressing room for their own privacy, a little bit easier. And then we'll have privacy walls for everybody. The project will have new floor and wall tiles. Excuse me, because of mine. I'm back. Anyway, sorry. Anyways, we'll get new floor and wall tile there. We'll have new plumbing fixtures throughout. We'll have new T-bar ceilings up on top. The lockers will get a fresh coat of paint and new hardware. That's for the missing parts. We'll have new partitions. Right now they're bright red, and we'll go to a white or something neutral. We'll put an energy efficient heater system in. The 2 heaters up there now are quite old, and we need to replace them. And we'll put some shelves in the dressing rooms just for personal use for your hair and your makeup, etc. So we had 4 contracts show up for this bid for the mandatory job walk. I received 3 bids, and here's my numbers. The low bid was $576. I also sent out probably about an email to like 7 to 10 previous bidders that we've used in the past or have come out on job walks. Let them know. I had Stephanie send it out. I've talked to the contractor that did Valle Lindo. I talked to him personally. So, and all three of these bidders, completely new. I've never heard of them. So there's somebody new that came out, you know. So here's our engineer's cost for this job. Engineer's estimate for this job was $397 for construction, 10% contingency. Total construction would have been $437 plus his fees to put it under $500,000. Our low bid came in at $576. 10% is $57,000. So $635 basically, with $61,000 for the architect and right under $700,000 for this job. Here's my project schedule. If we get this approved tonight, I'll be calling that contractor and get moving on this job. You know, give me insurance and everything, proper paperwork, and we should be done by April 15th. Here's some of the components that may be considered. The recreational impacts, if the board rejects all bids. The district advised a pool closure from January through mid-April with no schedule in aquatic programming. Staff would need to coordinate and build out programming, reach out to former employees as many as we can and have taken other positions due to the planned construction for this job, and plan additional outreach and marketing efforts to inform the community that we're going to either stay open or what. So funding for this project was come from 2019-20 Quimby funds. The total expense breakdown would be $576,817 for the project with a 10% for $57,682 for a total cost of $634,499 to the plus architectural fee of $61,990, which would put me a total cost of $696,489 plus the city permits and county permits because I had to go to the county too. Again, the district Quimby funds currently have $5,974,108. So recommendation. You got several options to consider. We've put a few up here. Approve and award the bid to SBS Construction for $576 plus 10% for total $634,499, or reject all bids received and re-advertise this project for construction, or reject all bids received and wait to rebid the project to coincide with the annual closure in September.
Director Malloy?
Okay, in your conversations with the contractors, was there anything about this project that they felt made it especially difficult or more expensive than perhaps other ways it could have been done?
No, and I went out and researched some stuff on my own, like for the tile. The tile work's the most expensive. It's a couple $100,000 just for all the tile. I looked at some of their bids, and to demo, they're getting some guy out of Pismo was $30,000. So right now time is, people are working, prevailing wages, people are working from all the fires, and work is plentiful. Like I said, there's no reason. I can't tell you why. This bid is nothing different than anything else we've done. Engineers' estimates even.
Well, looking back to earlier in the evening when you did the review of all the projects and you showed us in general we're consistently spending less than we're estimating projects to be. So this is unusual. Of course, it's a big number too.
Yeah.
A $700,000 bathroom model isn't something that, But I recall when we did the major renovation of the pool back around 2006, when I was a rookie, and it was $1 million, and I was just like stunned, like $1 million. Like, well, it's a lot of work. It's a big place, and it's expensive, and that's 13 years ago. So, I wish it would have been lower, but frankly, if you'd have given me a $100,000 higher estimate, we'd all be happy and feel comfortable. But, the reality is it is what it is. And it looks to me, it's in bad shape and is way overdue for repair, way overdue for updating. And I would prefer to do it now rather than go through a low revenue period, like say, because we have no scheduling, we have no employees, and then in the hopes that we would save some money later, when in fact it could be even more expensive.
Yeah.
And with another extended period of non-revenue. So I would be in favor of swallowing hard and approving the low bid on this project.
Mike?
First question is, have you talked, you said these people are all new, of course, you already said that. We've never used any of these individuals,
No.
companies, whatever.
No, but they all,
But did you check out their references?
they all meet the qualifications, yes. Yes.
Well, I know they meet the qualifications. That's not my question. My question is,
No.
did you physically call up and talk to any references to make sure?
Not on every one of them, no. We started with the first one, yes. So,
So you've talked to references in terms of the SBS
Yes.
company? And you're feeling, have they been around for a while, or is this something they haven't done with us before? Are they new, or are they just something?
I've never heard of them. They're from Camarillo.
Well, I'm trying to get a handle if they're operating out of someone's garage in the backyard, a tool shed, or are they actually a real company that's been around for 30 or 40 years and just haven't done this before? I'm just trying to get a handle on what type of
I
company
don't
this
remember
is.
on that, when I researched their license, I don't remember exactly what it was on theirs, but they've been around for a while, yes. Are they working out of a garage? No. No.
Have they been doing work here? Who's one of their customers? Do you remember?
Mike, I didn't bring the paperwork with me, their bid form, because all their bid form, I know they've done stuff for the county. Top of my head, I can't tell you.
You don't know if they did something for the
No,
city or
They give us a
something?
list of what they've done in the last 5 years. We asked for a list of what government agencies that you've worked for. So that's one of our stipulations. We want to know what that is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, following up on what Mark was talking about and you're talking about, is with all the fires and all the houses under new construction and stuff being replaced, I'm sure the labor cost has gone up.
Right, and plus
But,
prevailing wage also.
well, my question is, I'm still confused why this is costing a lot more than what was estimated. We're not talking about 10%, we're talking about 40 or almost 50% more than what was originally estimated. That's a huge difference. And so is it that the person who was estimating this is just from a different planet or working in Tijuana or something? Or I'm trying to get a handle how we can be off by that much.
I used the same architect firm that did Valle Lindo. And they come in right at Valle Lindo's numbers. And, when I said, Matt, what is on, look at these numbers. I sent him the bid form, and he's like, shocked. He's like,
Well, see, what I'm getting to in the back of my mind, if we were to wait 1 or 2 years, will the cost then actually go back down to a more reasonable level because people just have so much? I have relatives in this business who do construction work, and I know how they operate. And when things are hot, they just jack up the price through the roof, and they don't care if they get the work or not.
Right.
But then when things dry up, then they really are competitive then at that point. But
Yeah.
and what I'm afraid is that we're paying 40% over market value just because, so they know they can get it kind of deal. That's what concerns me.
And you're right. We can't answer if it's going to be cheaper in 2 years. I can't answer that one. I'd love to tell you that, but I can't.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of feel the same way as Director Mishler, except what I think might happen is when it's really good, not only will they jack up the price, you tend to get people on the smaller size projects that you would never hire at any other time. And 200K more, and we don't really know anything about them. And you said this a little while ago. Tell me if I heard you wrong. You said they're from Camarillo.
Yes.
So they're from Camarillo, and nobody knows who they are. That's a bad sign to me. I'm probably not going to vote for spending that money in fact, I would prefer we just table this till next meeting and do some research on the people who have bid on this project, because the last thing we need is to be hung out to dry by people who maybe get other deals, because you said it, business is hot right now, and this thing ends up in some stuck in the mud nightmare situation for us, all because we didn't do our due diligence to find out who we were dealing with. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these people, but I don't know who they are. I will make some inquiries on my own, because I represent construction people, but not being able to tell us anything about the people who want to do this project, to me, that's unacceptable.
Megan pulled up some little history for me. They were established in 1985. They started out from Westlake. They did the sea sucky. They worked out there in the music building and the Nike building, which I don't know what the Nike building is, but so they have done stuff for the government agencies of,
That sounded better. Where?
I don't know what that is.
Never
either.
heard of it.
It's an indoor recreation facility, Dojo Boom. They're good from their history. And that's just 3.
If I might say, if you table this another month, it'll really throw everything up in our plans with recreation, the closure period. Just want to throw that out there.
I mean, that's those references that I just heard, although they're not detailed, the facilities, it sounds better, but, I mean, we're responsible for doing due diligence when we spend the public's money.
Right.
So,
just let me jump in real quick, because as part of the bidding process, we did the same thing with PV Fields, we've done this with parking lots, is they all have to have had jobs within the last 5 years, as well as as well as with public agencies and like jobs. So that's one of the requirements. So when we go through and they vet them, those are things that they have to have on their reference sheet. So all of those things, whether it's that job or when they did Valle Lindo or out at Freedom, those were all expectations on each one of those jobs that they've been able to do those and or within the last 5 years. And actually, I think Freedom, we went a little bit longer to make sure that they had landscaping and such. But
Right.
You are correct. I can't tell you that this job, I think one of the things I would tell you is if we go forward with it tonight, or if the board is pleasure to reject all bids and then wait until September, because every month that we hold this, so if the board chooses to hold it till February, you're going to look at probably a 3-month closure. So now you're looking at February, March, April, and May. And when you start looking at May, June, July, those are the heaviest months, most used months. And that really, then you're going to have a public pool that's down during the summer, and we're the only public pool. So that tends to create some issues. If the board chooses to do that, then the recommendation might be to wait and then until a later date, until the pool closure in September. Yes.
Just so you know, they did LAPD's lifeguard tower, and they also did the Simi Valley Transit facility for 2 government agencies.
Thanks, Megan.
Okay. Yeah, I initially had that same concern when you said you'd never heard of them before. That was immediately an alarm. But recalling the issues we had over at Springfield Dog Park with the contractor there, I didn't want to get into some sort of issue with the contractor. In the, I'm sure it's in the RFP, but is a contractor subject to any kind of penalties if they're not meeting deadlines and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it's $250 a day.
That's correct.
Okay. And okay, that's really my only question. The other thing is agreeing with Director Malloy. The numbers just every time I see one of these things, the numbers just look so out of line to me. And just the remodeled 2 dressing rooms for more than $500,000 just seems like a tremendous amount of money when you can actually go out and buy a house for in this same price range. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned here in terms of the cost, I'm sure that the demand for construction companies and workers these days is driving up the price. But the other thing that when we did the Valle Lindo bathroom remodel, I asked the architect at that time what state regulation and prevailing wage and all those things contributed to the cost of these things, and he said 30 to 40%. So if you were to figure that those numbers in here, a $600,000 job would be $400,000, which still is a big number, but that's the impact that state regulations and things have all the way down the line with the taxpayers' money, and so. It is what it is, and I think we need to move forward with it. And so, okay.
I take it nobody has gotten any bids for remodels recently since the fires, so I have. And it's not a public works project at my house, and they've almost doubled. We had something estimated for us about 18 months ago, and then we had it done about 3 weeks ago, and it's almost doubled for the same identical work. So the guy told me, he goes, "I'm not looking for work." So, they have the work, and if they can get a public works job, they're going to do it. So what is the pleasure of the board?
I'm ready to make the motion.
Okay.
I move we approve and award the bid to SBS Construction for $576,817 plus 10% contingency for a project cost not to exceed $634,499.
Second. Second.
Was that hard to come out?
Yes, it was hard to come out.
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Director Dixon,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
I don't like it, but
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Chairman Magner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Maturity of the 2016 four-year certificate of deposit. Leo?
Good evening, Chairperson Magner and members of the board. Tonight, I'm going to ask the board to direct myself to what to do with the CD that matures in February with multi-bank securities, also known as MBS. The district has the board has the option to either take the funds out of MBS or roll them into another bond, a new CD. Currently, the district uses Pacific Western Bank for their operational funds. That's known as their general funds. We also use Ventura County Pool, LAIF, and MBS for our excess funds. That would be our capital and our Quimby. In February of 16, the district purchased a four-year CD for $245,000 with an interest rate of 1.65. So the district, again, as I stated, can either roll that CD over or we can take it out and deposit it into one of our Quimby accounts, being that this is Quimby money. We're allowed to invest up to 40% of our portfolio into a single type. According to the California Debt and Investment Advisory Council, it would allow us to invest up to $1.893 million, and we cannot exceed an investment over 5 years. Currently, the district has $645,000 invested with MBS. When the district initially invested with MBS, they opted for the latter CDs, being we purchased between a 1 year and a 5 year. As you can see, the 1 and 2 years, we've already cashed in and rolled those into the Ventura County Pool of the restricted Quimby money. So the CD I'm referencing tonight is the 4-year for $245,000, and it matures in February of 2020. As of today, if we were to roll those CDs over, these are the interest rates that are available to us. They range from 1.495 up to a 1.668. The Ventura County Pool, their November interest rate, this is for the Quimby money, was 2.259. I'm not able to get the December interest rate until about the 6th or 7th of the month, so I'm not able to provide that for you this evening. And then Pacific Western Bank, we have a small amount of Quimby money there, and that's 0.3%. Right now, there's no direct fiscal impact on the budget with this decision. It will just only affect the Quimby accounts with the possible future as far as what kind of interest rate we gain from this decision. So recommendation is, I took this item to the Finance Committee in November, and the Finance Committee opted in cashing out the 2016 CD, depositing the funds into the Ventura County Pool restricted Quimby account, and the staff agrees with the Finance Committee's decision. So with that, is there any questions for me?
Director Kelly?
None.
I didn't, so you're cashing it out and you're putting it into what?
Well, depending on if the board chooses to move forward with the Finance Committee's decision, it would be the Ventura County pool. And if
What is the return on
Ventura
that?
County pool, as of, for their November, their interest rate was 2.259. If you look on pages 10 through 12 of your packet, you can see that we, per the Finance Committee's request, I keep track of the interest rates for our different types of investments. And if you look, you can see the Ventura County pool has pretty much been the top interest rate for
Okay.
our investments.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I support this. I was never really in favor of the certificate of deposit in the first place, the CD, when we first did this back in 2016. I was against it then. It's never really made too much sense. And this was a good, I don't think we can lose by going into the Ventura County pool.
Well, we're in a very unusual time period where long-term interest rates are lower than current interest rates. So there's absolutely no advantage to us to commit the money for a multiple amount of time when the highest rate is essentially an overnight rate. So that makes this item as easy as the last item was hard. So hence our recommendation.
So we can't make any changes other than going to, with the 3 accounts that we currently have for Quimby funds. Is that correct?
Not sure that I follow.
Okay, you're telling me that we can only do one of 3 things. We can either go to MBS, or we can go to Ventura County, or we can go to Pacific West. We can't consider anything else.
We could consider CalTrust, but again, their interest rate isn't as good as Ventura County. It's significantly lower.
So right now, I'm not sure on that answer. And the reason I'm saying that is because we'd have to get clarification from CalTrust, right? So right now, we have our money in 5 different places. So CalTrust right now is only general fund. So what they'd have to be able to tell us is they could set up a different account. And I don't know that they can do that. So like, for instance, LAIF only has capital. So LAIF can't split up accounts.
Okay.
So right now, Ventura County Pool is the only one. We can get clarification from CalTrust to see if they can split that.
That's okay. I've asked the same question every year, and nobody seems to move forward with what I asked for. So that's just what I'm trying to figure out, that our hands are tied to one of these 3 funds for Quimby.
For Quimby, it is right now one of the reasons, and you're right, you asked last year, and so we put the non-restricted general fund. So that actually is doing that. So we just need clarification if that's a possibility.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll support the move. So can I get a motion, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve that the board cash in the 2016 certificate of deposit, CDs, and reinvest the funds into the Ventura County Pool Restricted Funds account.
Second.
Okay. Karen, please.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Director Malloy?
Aye.
Director Kelly? Aye. Director Dixon?
Aye.
Chairperson Magner?
Aye. Okay. 8F, consideration and adoption of resolution number 641, allocating Quimby fees from the Fairfield LLC subdivision at 341 Mike Lorza Drive, Camarillo, California, 93012 for projects at Pleasant Valley Fields, the Camarillo Community Center, Camarillo Grove Nature Center, and within the Freedom Park Master Plan. Anthony, you're on.
Good evening again. Sorry for the mouthful of a subject there.
Yeah, like, whoa.
Yeah. It's the nature of the beast with the Quimby funds, though. As we know, we have to specify where these things are going. So to summarize, districts received a little over $2.25 million in Quimby funds from this particular project in January of 2015, which means that according to the deadlines that we operate under, we are approximately 2 weeks away from needing to, or 3 weeks away from needing to figure out where this is going or have to pay the money back. So fees for the Village Gateway and/or apartments, about 450 units at 341 Mike Loza Drive, was the development responsible for this. And the proposed usage, which the district must specify in order to consider these fees encumbered or allocated, excuse me, not encumbered, allocated. The staff is proposing that we allocate them for projects at Pleasant Valley Fields, Camarillo Community Center, Camarillo Grove Nature Center, and within the Freedom Park Master Plan. Now, there's a particular reason why we're being a little more general with this, is that currently there is a little less than $2 million still left on this particular fee that has not been dedicated to a particular project yet. And in order to spend the fees, the district has to apply or has to abide by the various government codes regarding Quimby fees specified here. So the big one in question are 66477, and not so much for the for these two this time. And I'll get to that in a second. And the reason why the district's in possession of these Quimby fees is through City of Camarillo Municipal Code, which allows them to levy the fees, Chapter 18.30, Sections .01 through .120. So, where can you spend Quimby fees? Within the, quote, neighborhood, there are no restrictions on what you spend the money on as long as it's not maintenance and it improves quality of service or expands facility capacity. If you are spending them outside the neighborhood, you must follow this particular government code here, 66477, subsection A3B. However, neighborhood is not defined. So that becomes a bit of a, I would say, a question mark when it comes to spending this money, is what exactly is a neighborhood? So the subdivision location is in the old 3M area in this particular location. So you can see Pleasant Valley Fields right there. And the projects that the district staff is proposing that we allocate these funds toward, we wanted to consider whether or not they would be in the neighborhood. So Pleasant Valley Fields is obviously within this particular subdivision's neighborhood. It's less than a mile, I'd say less than a half mile away. It's in the immediate vicinity. However, the community center site projects, why would those be considered in the neighborhood? Well, the community center projects that are being considered for the near future. So the senior center recreation facility project service area would serve the entire city. The exterior programming that I know that Mike has brought up a number of times, those also would serve the entire city. The community center kitchen project, the expansion and redevelopment of that project to allow classes would also serve residents within the entire city. And any auditorium and classroom enhancements, as they're one of our only, or they are our only classrooms and one of our only large reservable spaces, also serve the entire city. So the logic behind that is that they are serving the entire city, including the development in question. So yes, technically, these improvements are within the development's neighborhood as the development is being served directly by them. So furthermore, the Freedom Park Master Plan implementation, items within this master plan were considered. So the baseball field construction for new fields, as they would serve the entire city. And also money from this particular development has been allocated to Freedom Park previously. We have already done that. That's how the two new fields were built. So the staff doesn't see any issue in justifying that particular connection there. And the parking lot enhancement and reconstruction would improve access to that particular facility, and when it also increase the amount of service that facility can provide. And landscaping and walking path construction as part of the master plan is a new feature for that particular facility that doesn't exist currently, so it obviously expands capacity. Once again, these projects serve the entire city, and like I said, this development has actually serviced this park before previously as well. The Nature Center site was also considered, as it is the only nature center in the entire community, and once again, to repeat myself, it serves the entire city. So the reason why staff went through this is, according to the government code 66477, the district shall develop a schedule specifying how, when, and where it will use the land or fees, or both, to develop park or recreational facilities. So by the projects I just discussed, that's the how and the where. We already know how and where they're going. So when is answered in this resolution. So while the district doesn't currently have plans within the budget to build these particular items in the immediate future, we do know that they are on the plate. We've identified them as individual projects. And the resolution seeks to address this by allocating any and all remaining fees received in lieu of land, and then the ellipses there is basically from this particular development, for the purpose of completing projects. Once again, a little bit more boilerplate there, and then the locations, Pleasant Valley Fields, the Camarillo Community Center, Camarillo Grove Nature Center, and within the Freedom Park Master Plan. So to summarize, as there is no direct fiscal impact from this particular action, however, it will enable the expenditure of Quimby fees received from Fairfield LLC to support those proposed projects. And the resolution would essentially allow spending those fees while there are still fees within that from that particular project, which is why we separate them out in the Finance Committee reports. So that way we can track how much of particular money is spent from one particular development. So what staff is asking tonight is that the board consider or recommends that the board adopt resolution number 641, allocating Quimby fees from the Fairfield LLC subdivision at 641 Mike Loza Drive, Camarillo, California, 93012 for projects at Pleasant Valley Fields, the Camarillo Community Center, Camarillo Grove Nature Center, and within the Freedom Park Master Plan.
We should specify, just add that for the public and ourselves. We're not saying what percentage is going to, we have 4 proposed areas, and we're being clear that all we're saying is the total amount spent over those 4 areas will add up to this much money. We're not breaking out any percentage or anything else allocation.
Absolutely. In fact,
I'm just making sure everybody understands that.
And what can be done in order to specify that at a later date is that when the district decides to move forward with any of these projects, when a budget is decided upon, a certain portion of that budget can be allocated from the Quimby account. That's essentially what this act would do.
All right. Director Kelly, you have any questions?
I don't.
Director Dixon?
Just one is once this money is allocated, do we then does the clock restart, that we have some time period that we have to complete the expenditure, or?
No, there is no defined deadline by which we have to spend the money. There has been some, in some research we've done, or I should say that I've done, there's been some question as to whether or not if a project never is funded, do we have to pay the fees back, kind of like with developer fees that we were discussing earlier. But under Quimby fees, there is no accounting mechanism that actually enforces that particular provision. And from what I can tell, no one's been sued over it yet. So the short answer is no. The clock doesn't reset. It's just kind of is what it is. But there's always somebody out there who could be, looking around for something. So, it's unclear.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I support this.
Spending the money is the easy part.
Yeah, right.
It's rounding up the money, and this is just more of the mechanisms and the legalese to do this, and I really appreciate the staff being so diligent about this, because there's a lot of money at stake, and you have to cross every T and dot every I and make sure we do it right, or get ourselves in trouble, and not do what the community is committed to. So I would suggest that we take up a motion that the board adopt Resolution 641 as explained on the screen there.
Okay.
I'll second.
Karen?
Director Malloy.
Aye.
Director Mishler.
Aye.
Director Kelly. Director Dixon.
Aye.
Chairperson Magner.
Aye. Anthony, that was a mouthful. Okay. 8G. I could make Mary do this, but I'm not going to. It's mine. The committee assignments for 2020. I've been just amazed how 2020 rolls off everybody's lips. It's something else. So, liaison committee, we are going to leave Directors Dixon and Mishler on there to work with the city to get our project moving along as they have been. Director Malloy will remain on the liaison part with Director Dixon on this committee for all issues concerning Pleasant Valley School District. Finance will be Director Malloy and Director Mishler. Long Range will be Director Kelly and Director Malloy. Personnel will be Director Magner and Director Kelly. Policy will be Director Magner and Director Dixon. Ad hoc Journey the Church will be Director Malloy and Director Magner. Ran Rancho will be Director Malloy and Director Mishler. I will give these to Mary, and I'll send it out to everybody so that they've got a copy of it. So that will be the committees. Ad hocs, additional ad hocs can set up as the case necessary. Okay. Goal-setting workshop dates. Megan, is that you? Or who? Who's doing goals? Are you doing?
Just real quick, so what we'll look at is, depending on when we get the special meeting set up, what we'll look at is either end of January or sometime in early February, depending on board members' availability and final setup time of the special session, so.
Okay. Do we have any idea about the special meeting?
Well, the city has their meeting next week at on the 8th, so she'll start looking,
Okay.
because I wanted to make sure that that was approved, and then we'll start setting up from there.
Okay, all right. So sometime after the 8th, we'll do it. Okay. Informational items, which do not require action, will be reported by members of the board and staff. First one is myself. It's my pleasure to serve as the chair for the coming year for the third time. I'd like to thank the outstanding staff. I know they're going to keep us very busy, as we found out tonight. Some controversial things and some things that we'll be moving forward with. Also, I'm just looking forward to working with everyone, as we have in the many years past, and we'll be very busy and productive for 2020 for Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District. So, Ventura County Special Districts Association, the CSDA counterpart or public affairs person, Stephen, will be leaving us, and we'll have a new person assigned. CSDA board has decided, the executive board has decided that they are going to advertise it, so we will get somebody, and they will give us someone temporarily for the time being. The annual meeting of the Ventura Special Districts Association is February 4th? 2nd? Uh-oh, Mr. Malloy, help me. Please.
It is February 4th.
February
That's a Tuesday.
4th at Sterling Hills.
Sterling Hills.
Yes,
Well-
so we'll be doing that. Special Districts Association will be having our first meeting of the year on the 16th and 17th, so I'll be traveling to Sacramento again, and we'll get started. We've already started seeing the bills that should hit. The two-year bills we've already been working on, and we've already gotten word about what new bills are going to be possibly introduced because the legislators come back on Monday. So where CSDA is ready to roll. So Director Mishler, Consolidation Oversight Board.
No meeting since our last board meeting.
Okay. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy.
No meeting since our last board meeting.
Okay. Standing committees, Finance.
Finance did meet. We're right on track with budget, but more importantly is we got our first property tax check, and we received $3,613,973 for Fund 10, which is the main property tax. That's up 4.777%, which is exactly the increase the city saw. So even though our boundaries are a little bigger than the city, there's actually very little property outside the boundaries. Almost all the buildings are in the district's boundaries and the city's boundaries. So that came out real close to what the city had forecast and what we actually got. Now, the assessment district, which is different because it's not a value based on the value of the property, it's a fixed amount. So that essentially goes up by the percentage that we're allowed to increase. And last year, I believe, was a really tiny few tenths, like 0.3% or something, plus the new properties. And that amount went up $23,496, which is 3.6%, for a total of $644,363. And so we're comfortably ahead of our projections. And since we have complete control of how much money we spend, we have the ability to keep under control on the spending side. We have very little control on the revenue side because 80% of our revenue is here. So we're in very good shape. This is the best news that I can possibly give you from finance. So.
Just pray for more rain.
Yes, pray for more rain. You probably notice our water is a little above the rate, but that's because early in the year there was a lot of hot weather, and Bob's had the water off for going on the second month now. So Mother Nature keeps dropping in on us the way it has, and when you stop irrigating at $60,000 a month of irrigation water, you get your budget back in shape pretty fast. So.
Liaison.
No meeting.
No meeting? No. Okay. When's your next meeting? Do you have one set up?
No, we don't have one yet.
Oh, okay. I just was curious.
No,
We have to
probably,
wait.
probably February.
All right, thank you. Long-range planning?
Also
Nothing?
did not meet, no.
Okay. Personnel did not meet? We did not meet, did we, Bob?
No.
Policy? I think everything came to the board last meeting that we moved on, so. Okay. Ad hoc, Journey of the Church.
Next week?
Okay. And Ran Rancho?
No meeting.
No meeting.
Okay. Foundation for Pleasant Valley Recreation and Parks. Megan was very nice to give me an update here. The Ugly Sweater 5K and Donut Dash was a super duper great success. We had 115 racers and we raised over $1,900. And what I thought was neat this year was 3 young men. And when they walked up to the table, I went, they're going to be one of our front runners, and all 3 of them, they raced each other. So that was kind of fun to see young people be so involved in a community event. So the next fundraiser we have is Topper's Pizza on Tuesday, January 14th from 3:30 to 9. And you can get a flyer at the office there at the front desk, or you can check the social media sites. I've seen it on the foundation sites and things, so it's there. So make sure that you get your flyer so we can go. So, once again, I'd like to thank Megan for the great job she does in doing the administrative and work part of the foundation. So, okay, general manager's report.
Since we've done all the capital, I don't have any updates right now. Everybody should see all the bathrooms are open, and so Bob's done the capital update, so I'm good for today. Okay. Comments? Oral communications? Mr. Malloy.
Meetings for last month were VCSDA on the 4th, our board meeting on the 5th, finance meeting on the 17th, and the employee appreciation luncheon on the 18th, which is very well done. Megan, you did an awesome job. You didn't have anything to do with it. Anyways, it was really nice, and recognizing our outstanding employees and nominating one from each group. I thought that was a really, really great idea. And it was really a lot of fun, and I appreciate the nice pen that the staff gave each of the board members. I'd also like to mention the Christmas parade. What great fun that was this year. How the theme was especially strong this year, and it's neat when you have a big sports star like Jessica Mendoza or Tommy Lasorda, come here, and all that's great, but it's also neat to see regular heroes, and that was really cool. Commander Kelly and Julie Zingerman, the rocket scientist lady, were really outstanding, and all the kids that were seeing them, you could just see they were super impressed by that and what they've done. And also keeping up the fun with the donut run. We're in the fun business here, and although we get to deal with so much dry and boring legally sort of stuff, it's great to remember that we're really in the fun business, and it's about having fun, and those people were really ready to have a good time. So thanks again for such a great event. That's all I have.
Yeah, I just want to second what Mark was talking about, especially the Christmas parade. I want to thank the staff and everybody in the community. A lot of volunteers, a lot of people involved with that for the whole community. And it was a great time for a lot of people. Thank you.
Bob?
I also would like to say something about the Christmas parade. My grandkids, I had all 7 of them, including my wife and myself in the car. So we had like 9 people in a Mustang. And so that was quite interesting. But no fights broke out, which is unusual. I thought it was the most efficient parade that we've ever done. That everything just went like clockwork. Everybody was in the right spot. Everybody's where they were supposed to be, and I just thought it was spectacular. I'm not going to take up a lot of time with this, but I've been looking around recently, and I was reminded of a kind of a worn-out old maxim that some professor in some nonsense class I had in college, where he was illustrating a point, and he used the lily on the pond example, where if you double the lily on the pond every day, it'll go slow at first, and then one day when it's 50% covered, the next day it'll all be covered. And what I'm referring to is if you look around the area, the athletic facilities that we have now very much to me look like that's all there's ever going to be. And there is a tremendous push from the state government and legislature to increase housing. And when we're done with the infilling, I can almost guarantee you that the perimeter is going to be under heavy-duty pressure to build a lot of housing, high-density housing. And if the citizens of the district and the city do not get together and find out what they really want, we are going to end up, without any doubt at all in my mind, a San Fernando Valley style of situation, where they have way fewer athletic facilities than they need, and all of them are worn to dirt in every single case because they're overused. The time for getting a little clarity on that subject is now, not when all of the housing permits have been approved. So I guess it all depends on what kind of community you want to live in. This is an athletic town. Every kid I know plays some sport or another, or it could be dance, or it could be a lot of different things, music, whatever. But we are going to very soon be the lily on the pond if we don't do something. Thank you.
Director Dixon?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say how great the Christmas parade was, but I unfortunately was not there. But I have a good excuse. I have a granddaughter who is dancing in the Nutcracker in Northern California that same day, and I couldn't possibly miss that. I've gone every year. But I did hear from the community, from people I know in the community, what a great event it was. And I'd just like to say Happy New Year to everybody, and I'm really looking forward to this upcoming year. I think we got a lot of good things going on in the district, and and some real challenges, and I'm looking forward to meeting those challenges. Happy New Year.
With that, we will adjourn.